The next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" They said, "Rabbi, where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. Over the past 2 to 3 years, I have found my head turned and my heart caught by the transformative glimpse of God I have experienced through Christian community. Like the two disciples, I have felt this glimpse feed a deeper curiosity, prompting me to follow and ultimately be invited to come and see. To this end, this 2023, I am embarking on a 6-month journey to dwell with various Christian communities. On the way, I'll be sharing interviews with community members, founders, and leaders to learn more about the blessings, challenges, and wisdom these dwelling places of God hold. In doing so, I hope to inform how it is we might nurture people and communities to be transformative manifestations of God, offering a glimpse of the divine and inviting people to come and see God's loving dwelling place.
I'm Cameron. I'm Deputy Cook at Iona Abbey, and I've been a volunteer here for 2 years before this season.
And was that a back-to-back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the end of last year I went home and I became a sushi chef in a restaurant in Glasgow, as you do. And then I decided that I would come back.
Oh. And what brought you to Iona in the first place?
I got an email to the university that I was studying at saying, "Would you like to come and be a musician?" Or inviting me to apply to be a musician. And I said, yes, I would like that. So that's why I came originally. And then as the months went on, I decided that I wanted to stay longer. So I moved into being like a general assistant before going into the kitchen.
Nice. So I didn't know, so the Iona community emails out notices to universities?
I mean, it must. Oh, no. Yeah, I think it had a contact with like a previous musician who then like just emailed it to a lot of music departments. I mean, which makes sense actually, especially if you want young people to apply. I think you should be doing that more. Yeah. Because they literally have a thing, they just go like, boop, and it just goes to everyone.
Yeah. And then what made you stay?
That is actually a really good question. I do think about it a lot. Sometimes I think maybe it was just that, I don't know actually. I think because I'd felt that when I got to university that was the right place to be. But then maybe I got a little bit bored. And here, like, there's so many interesting people and much more interesting paths to go down. So like, no one ever tells you, like, oh, what you did. Like, I could paint the most atrocious picture in the world, and the people here would be like, this is amazing. You're doing so well. And I think that's really nice. So I think if you have something that you're passionate about, but you've had that feeling of like, oh, I feel I can't do this because it won't be good enough or something, like, everyone here will support you in whatever you want to do. And also, you've got, like, a bajillion connections to like everyone in the world.
Yeah, and that's also my experience with communities. I just got a whole ton of connections. That's really helpful. And then did you come to Iona interested in the faith component? Were you part of like a church, or like were you Christian before coming to Iona, or is it more just the community separate from the Christian element?
I guess I'd always done like church music. So in my head I was like, oh, it's going to be all about church music. And then I kind of realised that actually a lot of the time it's community first and then your job after that. Like, so yeah, like I'm pretty good in the kitchen, like I can make meals, but they hired me because like I'm good in community and I've shown that, and like it makes sense. So I think I probably originally came for the job and then was like, oh, then had a bit of a breakdown. Had a, you know, I was thinking like, what's going on? And then I was like, no, this is okay. I think it just makes you look, everything's very intense. I think communities as a whole are very intense. I don't know any intentional community where the people don't swap out that hasn't lasted, like that has lasted for a long time. I think because it's such an intense environment, especially here, is your work life, your home life, your common life, and then on top of that you're on a remote island, so you know it's like intense to the biggest degree.
Yeah. And when you first heard about it, did you, presumably they tell you about the community side of it, was that an appeal, or was it just like, I don't really know what this is but I'll go anyway? Yeah,
in my head, so I'd never heard of like or intentional communities before, so in my head it was like a few people who lived here who like just would live in a small flat who would do the like abbey. Like I didn't really understand the whole like housekeeping and like kitchen and guest side of things. So it took until I came to really get the ethos behind everything. I was like, oh yeah, services, it's normal. Then they were like, there's 2 every day, and I was like, what?
And would you mind describing, what would you say a day, like what does a typical
day in my life? Typical day in my life is that my alarm goes off extremely early because I'm always terrified that I will sleep through like all of them. So I set it really early so that I can set like 10. Oh wow. So that I definitely get up. So yeah, I arrive at work at 7 in the morning, which is
that because you're in the kitchen?
Yeah, this seems like extremely early, but it's actually not bad. I think it's I like my life here in that pattern. So yeah, I arrive, I do some work, have lunch with everyone.
Well, do you have breakfast separately?
Yeah, we just kind of eat breakfast in the kitchen.
Makes sense.
And then we go to the service usually. And that's like the beginning of everyone's day, which is nice. And then the group chat starts flooding in with messages. And we have the standing meeting, which is like a quick catch of everyone's day and like anything important, which is really nice. Back to work, lunch, see everyone. And then either you kind of finish work at 2:30, 3. Usually I do some admin. I used to never worry about admin as a volunteer. However, now I get shiploads of emails and, you know, rewriting policies and thinking about things, which is good. I like it. I think you probably could be like, I'm not touching any of this, but I think it's important. And then if I'm on split, I come back and, do a bit of kitchen work 5, have dinner with everyone, clear up. And then you have a strange amount of time between like finishing clearing up and service. So you're kind of like a lost lamb for half an hour and then it's all right. Then you have the service. And then I always try and go on a walk after the service because I think it's like, it's a weird transition coming down from a service to bed. I think especially if you're leading the service, it's like you've put a whole lot of yourself into something. I guess the same going to church, you know, you put a lot of yourself forward and then you kind of have to be like, oh yeah, it's like, now I'm going to bed. Like, it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I really like what you mentioned about the like swapping over within community and the intensity, because I was part of living in a community in Cambridge, and like most people stay as a live-in member of that community for 1 to 3 years, and beyond that it gets hard because most people are working full-time and have the volunteer commitments on top. So something I'm interested in is how is it that you potentially create a community which is sustainable to be a part of, because definitely after this work week I'm like, I'm quite tired.
And I think actually you kind of really get into a groove with someone, and then it might change even like later than that, because obviously everybody goes through their own personal growth, and the place that you were in when you started the community probably won't be where you're at later on. And I think that's hard to kind of recognize. But I think, yeah, if you can do it, I think you should do it, even if it only lasts a year, because I think it's worthwhile investing in something like that. I mean, I love, like, well, there's a lot of debate over, is this how we're supposed to live? Like, are we supposed to live in communities? And I think probably, yeah. I mean, it does make sense, especially when, like, you didn't have mobile phones. I mean, even we all live in community and see each other, like, every day, and we're still constantly messaging each other. It's incredible. Like, yeah, it's very strange. Yeah, and also, yeah, when you meet someone for the first time in the real world, you're like, oh, here's someone that's going to be my friend. Let's plan to meet up, you know, in a few weeks. Here it's like, no, now you will be with this person every day until they leave.
And you get to know people in a deeper way, I think.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And you get to that point where you can just be in silence with people as well, and kind of, and it's, I think it's a different way of getting to know people. I don't know about you, but the people that I've lived in community with now just feel like brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it kind of like, you kind of have to skip all the, like, small talk and just go straight to the kind of like, now we're a family.
Yeah, and working together does something.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. And how do you find the transience of the Iona community? Because I really like the way that Cara described it, about it's almost inviting people into community every week with new guests. And that sounds quite tiring.
Yeah, I think it is tiring. I think it is emotionally draining, which is perhaps another reason why it's best not to stay too long, because I mean, with guests, you have that leave-in, and that's hard, and you've only known them for a week. But then when you get to know, like, volunteers, and they're properly, like, almost becoming a part of you, like, for months, and then you have to say bye, there's I think you have this whole grieving process, and then someone comes, not to replace them, but to replace their job. Yeah. And I think that can be hard, being like, I'm going to go and do it again, like, and then you have that, and it's constant because there's so many of us. So, you know, if there's 20 volunteers, like, and they all leave at different times, then you have that different kind of grieving process, which I think is really hard for some people. To some point at some point they just put up a wall and they're like, I can't get to know people anymore. I'm just exhausted. Which I think that might be a sign that it's time to go. But
I'm impressed that you've done more than 2 years. The transients.
Yeah, it was crazy the other night when we were talking at dinner, and we were like, I was like, oh, I'm the only one left. Like, Annie and Jack are here to help start the season, but then they're gone. And we were like the only long-term volunteers who stayed that long. It's really interesting.
I think part of so I have a real interest around intentional Christian community, and also in terms of young adults and communities being such good spaces to graduate into. Or even like not immediately after graduation, or not like even after school and things. But I was wondering whether you had any thoughts on like being a young adult and community, and what it's brought to you as a young adult versus not being a community. Yeah,
I've definitely learned a lot, and also like I've become so much of a healthier person, and I've kind of had that space to realise who, like when I came, I think I was a bit rough around the edges on who I was, but it made sense after. Like at university, I went out every night, like with my friends, and I was so drunk all the time, like an absolute mess. But I didn't do it because I liked going out. I did it because I liked being with my friends. But then here, I kind of realised, like, no, there's a lot of people who don't go out like that, and they're not a mess, because, you know, they've just been able to realise what they like. And I think, you know, a lot of people are like, I don't know, a lot of dads have like their hill walking friends, you know, and they like go out once a month. And I was like, what is this? Like, it's so weird. But actually, like, being here, I'm like, oh no, like, of course you should do things that bring you joy. I mean, yeah, I I saw this interview and it was like the meaning of happiness, and I was like, we don't really know what it is, but being here, I've been happier than I've ever been, and I think it's because it gives me a purpose. It's less about, I love cleaning the bits of food off a plate. Like, that's disgusting. Nobody likes doing that. But I'm happy because I'm doing something that I know is good.
Yeah.
And I think, especially working here, you know what you're doing is good. You're looking for justice and peace. Like, there's nothing, no one can kind of be like, how dare you want justice and peace for the world.
And is that, did you really feel the absence of community when you had that break working in Glasgow as a sushi chef?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, in a way, your workplace, I was like trying to build, I was almost like trying to usher people into a community because I felt so strongly that we should all like hang out and stuff. Yeah. Whereas like most people, they want to go to their job and then they want to leave. Yeah. I also think that's really hard. Like I would struggle to do a job like that. Yeah. But, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And how do you feel like the community has brought anything in faith-wise, or has that just been a more neutral aspect of your experience here?
I definitely think it has. I think I was a Christian-ish, but now I'm a bit more like solidified in my faith. And like I don't necessarily align completely with Christian views. I mean, I think what even is that is it's hard to define. Yeah. But it's nice to meet other young people who are also like thinking about things. Actually, just everyone who's just like thinking about their religion. It's really nice. I mean, I definitely now believe in reincarnation, and it's nice to be in a Christian space where you can say that and people won't be like, it means they're not Christian. Because I think that's a big thing about putting up, like a lot of the times we put up these huge barriers, whereas, and that, because you're living here, everyone strives to understand, and I think understanding is probably the best gift that someone can give you, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think what Iona, I think a lot of Christian communities, including Iona, is that there's what we believe as Christians, but then it's also just how we are and how we live out. And you walk into the Iona community and everyone's just so friendly and loving and supportive, and there is just a special vibe about the place. And what would you say to people who are like around our age who are considering community?
I think go for it, definitely. Even if it's like you and your friends make a house and then like talk about your experience. I think that might even be more worthwhile. But sure, like come and experience, even if it's for a week, like come and experience what we do here, and you can take that away. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about today as part of a personal development program for like work was like I'd love to go to other communities and see how they do it, because I've been so wrapped up here, like I've forgotten the like surely they're doing it differently, and that would be interesting to see. Yeah,
no, I'm really excited. This is my first kind of community I'm visiting in the UK, but I'm excited to see how other people do it. Yeah. And are you part of the young adult Iona?
Yeah, group? I am. Yeah, so I became an associate member and then joined the young adult group, which is really nice because there's a lot of people that you've met here and you can still keep in contact with them, which is good. And also, just anyone who's got that kind of social justice idea, it's really nice. I also remember in school, it was around the time when like social justice warrior was being that like coined as that bad term to call people. Like it was like, oh, you're such a social justice warrior, like you don't like these things or whatever. Like you're trying too hard.
I didn't realise that was a thing.
Yeah, so it's nice kind of coming here and being like, no, actually, justice is very important. Like, you should want that.
And I really appreciated when you stood up the other day at dinner to announce the thing about the petition, and that feeling really important, and that this is the kind of place where you can do that.
And everyone, is very support. Like, as soon as you're like, I think this thing, everyone's like, okay. And you're like, great. It's really nice, like, because like it's not something that you can disagree on, which is very nice to hear, you know. As soon as you're like, climate change is bad, everyone's like, yeah, no need to state the obvious, you know. Whereas like actually, I think I found like in university people were just like, please be quiet, like we don't want to hear about it, which is like maybe to do with, I don't know, or I feel like people just don't talk about issues, and I'm like, I can't believe we're all gonna sit through this and just like let it happen, like this just seems insane to me. Or it's like that thing of, you know, until it goes really big, like when the Black Lives Matter thing took over, and it was just like everybody just posting black squares, and I was like, I get it, like I do get it in some way, but in another way I don't really understand. Like, you've never talked about it before now, you just post this and you've never talked about it after. Like, I don't know, is this really important to you? Or like, I don't know what the reasoning is. But
well, thank you for sharing your passion and conviction and caring.
I wouldn't want to take down anyone's like stance on things, but it's a strange space to be in, and that like I feel a lot of people call themselves activists, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, all these other people come in and you're thinking, wait a minute.
And what would you say, I mean, we've touched about some of the challenges, but what would you say is perhaps one of the biggest challenges about being in the Iona community?
I think just really reaching that understanding, and not, like, if someone's saying something, not getting angry straight away. Because a lot of the time, like, we have this phrase now, it's like, assume good intentions. Assume everyone is coming from a place of love. Because, sometimes it's very hard to do that. Like, if someone is telling you, I don't know, that they don't understand why you believe something, like, it almost feels like you're trying to justify yourself, but really, they just want to understand you. And it's, about assuming that everyone is coming from a place of kindness and not just, like, defences going up straight away. Yeah,
and it feels like here that generally, I do feel like people generally are always coming from good intentions or trying to be as loving as possible.
I think, exactly. Most people are. I wouldn't say that works for everywhere, but for here, I think it does, which is nice.
And what would you say one or some of the biggest blessings have been?
It's definitely the people. I mean, the island is beautiful. I'm not saying this, no. But really, the Iona community could be anywhere. Could be in Glasgow, and I'd still love it. It just maybe wouldn't be as scenic. But I think that's probably one of the biggest issues actually we have, is that like we have a lot of lovely pictures of the island and not a lot about the people. But it's like the people who make it. Like this is our thing, you know.
And I say, for example, it's quite an extroverted community in a way, and that there's a lot of people contact versus like very contemplative monks and nuns.
Exactly.
Where like the scenery might make more sense if you were like a Benedictine order or something. But that's cool.
It was funny, like in winter we have quiet weeks, but they're not silent retreats. It's just quieter. But a lot of people come who are like looking for the monks in the monastery, and they turn up and I'm here like, what? Like, got the conga stuck in my head 24 hours a day, and they're like, what is going on? But by the end of the week, a surprising amount of people actually like it, which is nice, because I think if you're coming for a silent retreat, you're probably expecting something very different.
Because it is a very busy and active place to be. So I have, for example, had a lot less quiet than I usually would today, but that you get like amazing people and stuff. So it's so interesting.
It's the extremes, isn't it? In one bit, you can be surrounded by everyone; it's incredibly loud, and then in the next moment, it's completely silent. Like even all that background noise, because you're here, is gone. It's just you're just left. And I think that's also a little bit scary sometimes. such an it's all about intensity, and you have to kind of find the balance.
And to kind of wrap up, so this podcast I've named Dwelling Place because for me there's a sense in which there's a certain special dwelling of God in communities, like just 3 people, and I was wondering whether there's a sense in, whether you have an idea of where you found God, perhaps, in your experience of the Iona community.
Yeah, I think sometimes I found it through just sitting in the Abbey in silence, but then a lot of the times it's through meals. I think there's definitely something about that, you know, that work and worship being intertwined in the meal times, radical hospitality, and that, you know, yeah, it's just a dinner, but actually, you know, you're talking to someone you might had never ever have met because this is so strange, and you're eating food that I wouldn't normally eat this, but, you know,
Mac and cheese with breadcrumbs.
Here I am. Yeah, here I am. But I still eat it, you know, and I still am I really appreciate everyone, and I think a lot of the times kitchen are very lucky because the food is right there and everybody is like, oh, the food was amazing, thank you so much for dinner. But without everybody else, we wouldn't get there. So without housekeeping, there's no plates. Without the admin team, there's no people here. Without, you know, all these steps that it takes. And I think, found God through walking with other people and sharing time with them. And that's very special.
I have thought of another question. How, as a young person in the Iona community, and having been here for 2 and a bit years, how is it that you see the sustainability of the community and kind of younger people coming in?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, like many churches, although this isn't a church, it struggles with finding people. We do have an all right group who are like size-wise, who are, you know, pretty committed. How sustainable it is, I don't know if it gets more sustainable with social media or less, because we're always all striving for connection, but how much connection do you get on the other side of a phone? So I think it really comes down to if people feel that, you know, actually we can all live on Zoom now, then I think we might not have much chance. But I think actually lockdown helped with that, and that a lot of people now are like,
We do need people.
what have we been doing? And like almost like, why are we on this hamster wheel of like, go to university, get a job, then like buy a house and then do all this stuff. And I think all that stuff is great. Like I would like to have a house someday, but you know, there's also so many other experiences out there, and so many people. There is incredible people, and it's masses of them, like just huge amounts that aren't either. It's not even fathomable about all these interesting people. And because you don't hear about everyone, you think, oh yeah, there's those famous people and those people over there. My friends are pretty interesting, and there's me. But you don't realise, the rest of the population, like, it's because you can't quantify that. So I think hopefully we're very sustainable, but probably we will struggle. I mean, we've struggled in the past, and I think we will struggle again. But I think if you want to do anything, then you probably have to fight for it a little bit.
No, because it's quite noticeable. It kind of feels like there's the sub-30s and then the kind of 50 plus.
It's definitely
like I guess it's the pair, like,
it's definitely like people in their kind of later 30s, 40s, like are all busy, like having families and stuff, which I think is why I've really loved hearing about some people who have like invited people into their homes and almost created like a community. And I think actually it's so good for kids, like just to be like, look at all these people. Like,
have people stayed with families?
I mean, the Iona community is so great in that, like, if I was to go on holiday and I could email a member and be like, can I come and stay with you? And they'd be like, So that's so amazing. Yeah, and I know a lot of members who have like refugees living in their house, and then or just other people, or they've created houses for, they live there, and then people come and stay with them and kind of travel through, which is so nice.
It's like a multiplier, a community multiplier.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much.
I hope that was okay.
It was excellent.
Show me